You got one life, for crying out loudly. You might as well just give it all you got.
The Deej, Dan Jordan.
Then you don't got to worry about selling anymore because they're just too busy buying. What's it going to take to get you into this car today, huh?
And now, please welcome the Sales Energizer, Dan Jordan. Never gets old.
Oh, you did the arm thing today. Look at that. You're sneaky. Stealing my stuff.
Hey, you know what? Some of the best ideas are stolen. We talked about this. Some of the best ideas. Everyone steals from the Deej.
Well, they all started from the Bible. So if everybody's stealing all that stuff, it just keeps on going on from there. Actually, I do a Bible study on Friday mornings, and every morning I go there. It's like it's a law. As soon as I sign on, it's a Zoom thing now, obviously. And whenever I sign on, I'm like expected to be like this. Like they get upset if I'm not like this when I come on the thing. That's how quickly people get used to stuff. Do you not hear me? Am I on this thing?
Hang on a sec. I had a bit of a glitch. Welcome to live streaming. I just had one of my tabs go out. Maybe someone who's more technologically inclined of a younger generation can show me how this streaming stuff works. So I apologize. I had a bit of a glitch going on with my camera. So in any event, it's been a while, and you can tell I got to knock the rust off here in the I guess I'm not the Southern Command Center. You're the Southern Command Center.
Yeah, well, I'm at global headquarters right now. The Southern Command Center is my closet in the basement. But here we are at global headquarters of Liger, which is a social media just haven for things that happen. But we've been big on the podcast. We just haven't done the live streaming.
That's true. That's true. It's been a minute, and we've been rocking some podcasts. Great week for the latest podcast of the Sales Energizer, which just dropped this week, available in the show notes. The Sales Energizer podcast. Make sure those of you who have not listened to the Sales Energizer podcast this week, you're going to get tips on working from home. And I have to admit, it's really just one tip. There's just one tip that I got from the latest Deejcast.
Well, that's all. That's all you need. All you need is how many can you use? I do a lot of work with job seekers, and how do I put together this marketing program to get this job? How do I put this marketing program to get customers and all? Hell, at the end of the day, how many jobs do you need? One. And even if you have a business, any kind of business that you have, if you're in a consulting type of practice, how many can you really handle? 5, 6, 10? There's thousands of opportunities out there. And so, how many tips do you need? You just need one that works. If one that works, you don't need anything else. But you get tons more. So listen to that. But you've been rocking it with the podcasting. I hear you got a new client yourself, the Jim Fuse podcast, which is awesome.
Yeah. So we launched a podcast called Launch Your Live, and it's with Jim Fuse and Christian Karashevitz, and it's about launching a live stream, which is what we're doing right now. And it's a great podcast. They've had some really good early success. It's already in the top 30 on Apple Podcasts in the marketing
I know
category.
You're ticking me off. You're ticking me off. They're just getting started, and they're at 30, and all these other ones are moving up. And the Deejcast, Sales Energizer, is just
we got to be better.
Hovering it. We got
to use it for fuel.
Actually, that's brilliant. That's exactly right. So there's the tip. You guys can leave now if you've been here, whoever's here so far, you can leave now. There's the tip. The tip is whenever you have a problem in your business, the answer is always found in the mirror. The answer is always found in yourself. You just got to be better. You got to be better in knowing your product, knowing your service, and knowing your customers. And it just so happens that your customers now and your prospects now are, if you're anything like me, of a different generation than you. And I had an experience this week that I'll tell you about later that made me realize I literally have no idea what's going on in the head of certain generations. And so I took action about it, and I said, let me find somebody who knows. Let me find somebody who can teach me what's going on in the world, because I'm looking at a blank chalkboard. And the fact that I even said chalkboard tells you how clueless
What's a
I am.
chalkboard, Dad?
Yeah, that's right. So we got that going. So why don't you bring on our guest?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Vanessa Martinez of Liger Partners. Hey, Vanessa.
Hey guys. Dan, I think that they're called smart boards now, not chalkboards.
You see?
So, there you go. That's your first lesson.
There we go. So we got that going.
We can just end it here. I mean, lesson learned. All we need is one. There we go.
That's it. So but that's interesting. So if I say chalkboard, you immediately know something about me, don't you?
Well, I guess so. But I mean, we still use chalkboard. I would still use the term chalkboard. But I was in school when they actually replaced the whiteboard and chalkboards with the smart boards. But my younger siblings, I don't know if they've ever seen those chalkboards and whiteboards like, we have. So, but yeah, that's lesson number one.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you. Well, so Vanessa, for those of you who don't know Vanessa, and that's probably like hardly anybody, because she's brilliant in her marketing aspects of life. And what happened was I was in an office this past week, and someone asked me a question about sales. They said, how should we deal with this potential customer and prospect? And I said, well, what's wrong? They call in, they're interested in the service, call them again. And there was a group of people in the office of a different generation than myself. And they did some investigation on this prospect by looking at their website. And because of what they read on the website, and they were offended by what was on the website, they didn't want to do business with the person. And the question asked them to be of, should I even call this person, or how do I get rid of this person who wanted to do business with them? Which is something that makes no sense to me. I mean, my dad used to tell me, the best revenge for a bad customer is to take their money. That's what my dad taught me. But this group, much more aware, decided whether or not they want to do business, based on what they read with this customer. And so that made no sense to me. And then when I explained that to this group of people, they had valid reasons why I was wrong. And so it was a learning moment for me. And so I thought maybe Vanessa I know you said you're not the spokesperson for millennials, but why don't you tell us who you are?
So at my very core, I'm Vanessa. I think that that's a deeply unique thing about people. And I tried not to prepare too much for this conversation, Dan, because I didn't really know where you wanted to go with it. And I also think that by not doing more research into what a millennial is and what Gen Zer is, I could provide you more value by truly telling you, who I am. I'm born right in between millennials and Gen Z. Some people say I'm a Gen Z, or some people say I'm a millennial. So I don't really know which one I identify with. But at the end of the day, I don't identify as either of those things. I identify as myself. Looking at those different groups, millennials and Gen Zs, looking at, what the times that we're growing up in, kind of help explain some of the behaviors that we have as far as what's happening in our timelines as we're, maturing and our brains are developing. Yeah, I think that that's helpful. But I think kind of like the conversation you had that you mentioned just a second ago, is we have putting too many labels on people. We deprive ourselves from opportunities, but we also protect ourselves from threats, if that makes sense. But I think that the world, we're getting a lot more information a lot faster and a lot quicker. And that's basically what our brain does, is we're just data processing centers. So as the more information we're getting, the faster that we're able to input those opinions that we have on others that we haven't even met yet. And can it be helpful if I see a bear, this is say in prehistoric times, I see a bear. I have all this information about bears. They're bad. So next time I see a bear, I'm just going to assume that bear's probably just like the rest of the bears. So I'm just going to stay away from that. Right. But now I think that it can be prohibitive in some cases where we have these instances where we've come across so many different types of people, and we see somebody who fits that stereotype, or we just assume certain things about them, whether it's like a generational thing or a gender thing, or dare I say a race thing. And we have these assumptions about people that we just want to write them off immediately. So is it something I'm guilty of? 100%, absolutely. Because like I said, it's kind of in our nature. But I think it's something that we have to talk about, which is why you invited me on this podcast, on your podcast, was so that we can have these conversations. And I don't know, I'm just excited to be there. I don't know, did that answer your question? I don't know what the question was, but I just had so many thoughts about all that you just said.
It was a great answer. It may not have totally answered the question, but it was a great answer, for sure, and extremely interesting. So you talked a lot about, I think you said our brains are data centers. Is that, am I paraphrasing that properly?
Yeah. Yeah, we're basically just computers. We get data, it comes in, and it outputs something in response.
So you, for Liger Partners, you work for Liger Partners, and your job is social media based. So you work with particular clients that are Liger clients, and you work with their social media. So speaking of data centers, you have to really know your stuff in terms of social media. So when someone uses the words social selling, what does that mean to you?
So I actually read a book it's called The Art of Social Selling. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, because I mean, like, being in social media, I wanted to learn more about what social selling is. But in terms of social media, I think it's just like using the power of social media to like kind of leverage your selling abilities. So it's more used as a tool than it is necessarily like the actual, like, this is going to land me my next deal. Like, no, not necessarily. Like, the power in social media is like how you choose to use it. So it's kind of like the Force, like in Star Wars. I don't know if you guys watch Star Wars or like Star Wars, but
now you're talking our language, Vanessa. Now you're right in the lane.
Yeah, but the power of the Force is like, depending on if you're good or bad. Like, you could use it for good, you could use it for bad, or you could use it to your benefit, or you could use it to your dismay. So, that's kind of how I feel about social media and selling. But as far as social selling goes, like, I think I'm definitely not the expert. You probably have a lot more you guys could tell me about social selling.
Well, I guess my question is, you're doing this for marketing to people. So in marketing to, certain group, I understand you're an individual. I am too. And, that's something that we have very much in common. I kind of avoid being clumped in with a group, though people tend to do it, for you, but who cares? You can do whether you're an individual. But when you're marketing, yes, there's certain commonalities that certain people do that a different generation will do, other than one other. In that example that I talked about earlier, the person who was probably my age was a financial planner, and his lane was to market to divorced women who maybe their husband was the breadwinner of the family, which is much more common in the past, and they got divorced, and now they're in a different position than they were before. And so he phrased it in a way that people in the office that I was in were almost offended. Who is this person to think that I'm not able to handle my money without his help? He's going to come to the Savior. So he thought he was doing a good thing. How could he have phrased that to reach an audience of you without offending you?
So I think in that particular instance is, as women, and especially like as gender roles are trying to kind of switch, if that makes sense. I personally believe like there are different things that men can do, or there are different things that women can do, but those are particular skill sets, and like just natural abilities. For instance, like having babies, or I'm also going to be the natural caretaker when I do have babies. My husband is not going to have the same things happen to him that happen to me. I'm just going to innately be a better care provider in that sense, right?
And of course.
Of course, Dan is frozen. Our only second glitch of the day. So hopefully he'll he'll jump back in. So let me ask a follow-up question on and this is a bit of a turn. Hopefully Dan will get his situation handled. But so at Liger and your position for social media, I'm sure you're dealing with a wide array of clients, and those clients obviously have different types of customers, and those customers use social media very differently. So, and I know the answer probably starts with it depends, but what is your process for when you're sitting down with that client and you are understanding what, or who their ideal customer is and how you go about determining their social media strategy?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and you might be a true marketer at heart. I'm not sure if you're in in marketing, like what your extensive background is, but you're so right. Like it depends. But we always find at Liger a good place to start is with strategy. And like not only does your marketing need a strategy, but social media, you need a strategy too. Can you just go out and start posting randomly? Yeah, absolutely. But if you do anything at random, you're not going to be able to measure it. You don't really know exactly what your goals are. So it's all going to start with an initial strategy session. So, and that could be anywhere from, it depends on what we're going to be doing with the client or even who the client is and where they're at in their marketing, but it could be anywhere from an hour and a half to a full 8-hour day. So truly understanding one, like their ideal customers, and that's not like a demographic thing. We typically shy away from asking like income level, like those things are kind of already a given, but truly who those ideal clients are, like where are they buying, how they can help that client. So like, and that's typically where our clients succeed most, when they are being true with themselves. Instead of saying, ideally, this is where we would like to be. Like we do talk about their ideals and we do want to get them to our ideals. That's goal setting. But right now, who is your ideal client? So truly identifying like who that is and making it an honest conversation. And then from there, talking about what are your goals? Okay. What are your unique selling capabilities? And then also, why do people come to you? Like what is happening in your day to day? And that doesn't sound like it translates to social media, but it really does, because you're developing that brand voice and you're able to convey it more genuinely on social media. I talked about how social media is a tool. It's not the end all be all. So by just posting on social media, checking the box, a lot of business owners, and by a lot, I would say probably all business owners, before, understanding truly what content marketing is, they're like, well, I posted on social media for a week and nothing happened. But really, they were just resharing articles. There was no thought, there was no strategy. But when, you're really able to develop that strategy, sorry, I lost my train of thought, but.
No, I mean, it makes perfect sense. I think a lot of people, when they are apprehensive and they don't fully understand social media, they just think, well, we got to get on Twitter, and we've got to get on this, and we've got to get on this, we got to get on, and then they basically are doing sort of the same thing across everything, and they're not actually looking at each thing individually, and maybe just doing one or two really well, and utilizing those for their ideal customer. And instead of just saying, hey, look at all, we have a Twitter profile, and we are on Facebook, and we're on but are you doing them really well? And so that's why people need to do Vanessa.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
but
that's
all. Just kind of what I do. The challenge is for the business owner or the entrepreneur. Hell, we don't want to know all that stuff. You know what we want? More customers. And, that's where Liger comes into place. All that stuff on the inside, we want you to do that. Well, it's much better for the business person to do, in my humble opinion, is to, dish out some money and let you guys worry about that. And, we'll make the content and you spread it out. Is that kind of what you guys do?
So I would say it's kind of a hybrid between the two. Like, yes, we do take it over for our clients so that they don't have to put in the hard work. But at the end of the day, and where I was going with what I was saying was, it's not just about posting on social media. Social media is just a tool. You really want to get that brand voice out there, and you want it to come across as genuine, because today's consumers and the people who are on social media, the people that you're trying to talk to, they are smart and they are savvy, and they can see through that they can see through inauthenticity, if that's a word.
That
so
works.
if you're just handing it over to Liger,
what's brand voice? I'm an old guy.
So your brand voice. So have you ever? Hold on. Wendy's. Have you ever heard of the Wendy's Twitter?
No.
So the Wendy's Twitter, have you heard of it?
Yes.
The Wendy's Twitter. So Wendy's Twitter, they kind of have a very unique brand voice. They go out, they kind of like roast Burger King and McDonald's. They have like this. They have really good like comebacks, or you might call them as like slapbacks, or they're really good at roasting people. I don't know if you know what roasting is, Dan.
Let's roast Dan right now.
You mean like the Dean Martin celebrity roast, circa 1981?
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
We got a comment from Doug Lehman. In layman's terms, knowing the ideal client, ICP goals in layman's terms. Doug knows what his ideal client is for sure.
Yeah.
And so does Jeff Sheehan. He's chiming in from YouTube. Props to Jeff. Just a monster presentation in a virtual summit, a social selling summit that I viewed about a week ago. So in any event, all right, if anybody's got any questions, or if they want to roast Dan, jump in the chat. You use your emojis, whatever.
So that's cool. So that's interesting, because roasting is basically mocking people, right?
It can be.
Right.
It can be.
So now, here's the challenge: if I just don't mock people because I don't know, it's just not my thing. And so, but if I were to, it would sound rude, or I would think I was being rude. When is mocking people helpful to your brand voice, and when does it just make you sound like a egotistical, self-centered, sexist, Islamophobic, racist bigot?
Yeah. So I think that's a really good question, because like roasting, you definitely can't just go out and just accuse people of things. But roasting is typically like a friendly jest. So some of the there are like roasting shows that happen like once a year, and typically it's like comedians come together and this person like agrees to be roasted. And that's kind of translated onto social media, where people like roast you, or even in real life where it's like, oh man, you just got roasted. So that's another one of those millennial Gen Z's tidbits for you, Dan. But it's typically like when somebody just gives it's kind of more of a playful dig at somebody's character that it is like, I'm actually being rude. So it's mostly in jest. It's mostly not mostly, it is all in good fun. But that's kind of like that area that we were talking about yesterday, Dan, where sometimes that stuff does get toxic, because we were talking about cancel culture.
Oh yeah, did you ever hear of this thing, cancel culture?
You haven't heard of cancel culture? You're going to get canceled because you haven't heard of cancel culture now, Dan.
What the heck is a cancel culture?
We'll get into that one.
Is that like when people unfriend you and make it like you don't exist? My brother-in-law, by the way, won't talk to me.
Your brother-in-law has canceled you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But typically cancel culture, it refers typically, it can happen at the micro level with like your brother-in-law not, talking to you. But a lot of times it happens with celebrities or anyone with some sort of figurehead, where people cancel them for, whatever, from anything from being like racist to being like a predator to just being a toxic person in general.
Wait, but how did that? I'm sorry, because this is really interesting. But how does that manifest to the person being canceled? Like, what happens to their life?
They kill their career in some cases. A lot, people get canceled. If people do something racist,
that someone else,
it could be a career ender for them, and they'll be quote unquote canceled.
But what if like for instance, that event that happened in the office where that person came off as being sexist because of the verbiage that he used in his website. He might not be a bad guy at all, but somebody, so he's not, in his mind and in the mind of his family and his spouse and all that stuff, he's not. but someone else can get offended by it and then literally ruin his career?
So I wouldn't say like it's necessarily ruin your career, because if he didn't do anything wrong, and I would need to read more into it and see exactly with this guy, but that's where cancel culture can become really toxic. If it's like a child predator and it's like this highly regarded, movie star, and it comes out later he's a pedophile, yeah, that guy deserves to be canceled. Like that's not okay, obviously. But if it's, this guy who somebody just thinks like, wow, that's kind of sexist, he's not like hurting women, he didn't go out and, actually do anything wrong per se, we'd have to take a deeper look into that one. But that's where cancel culture can get toxic. But at the same time, you have to have a large following agree and like kind of create that movement around them. So it's basically like voting with your dollars. It's all the same thing for like Twitter. So for instance, if it happened to a celebrity, maybe everyone unfollows that celebrity and refuses to support them. So that's basically what cancel culture is. So it's not just like a button that people can push. It's mostly like movements around these people that have generally decided this person doesn't deserve the fame and the revere that they have.
It's not all, pitchforks and torches.
But here's the question. For the person that's doing the canceling, because they're so offended by it, or whatever, and they want to voice their opinion about it. How does it help that? Why would somebody do that to another person?
See, and that's kind of where it gets blurry, because like I said, like I think it's in some cases when it's like a pedophile or somebody who's just like outright racist and hurting people, like, yeah, that person doesn't deserve to have revere and they shouldn't be spewing those messages across the internet. But when it comes to people who you just don't agree opinions with, that's where it starts getting toxic. And I don't think it's okay, because you're not going to agree with everyone like for the rest of your life. And
I have such deep love for you. I can't tell you.
But, like those are truly the people that like, and that's what makes, America great, is that we have these differing opinions and we can sit here and we can talk to each other about our differing opinions. But when we're intolerant to others' opinions, and they're purely just that, is opinions that aren't necessarily hurting anybody, that's where that, not just cancel culture, but just culture in general, gets really toxic. Of like, we're all afraid of the other, when in reality we're all the other and we're all the same. I don't know.
That was great. Excellent point. Yeah.
Well,
I like that. It was all about America and why it's such a great country, and that was very well spoken.
So is that I know you're not the spokeswoman for both those generations, but
no, I'm not. But I am both them, so I have some sort of legitimacy. Okay.
Well, you have all sorts of legitimacy. What kind of thing is that to say? But what is your opinion of the people that you associate with? Is that a common opinion, what you just said?
I would say it. What's crazy, Dan, is we make so many generalizations about different groups. Even Gen Zers and millennials, I have some generalizations about those groups that, again, like I shouldn't have those at the end of the day, because I meet them, they're my friends, they're my family, and I've never met anyone who has any other opinion than like respect. Are they the outliers? But but typically that's just the loud minority making a fuss, right? Yeah. So I think that's where it's toxic. Like I know you and me, Dan, like in the office, I like to talk to you because you do have differing opinions than me. And one of the biggest things I am afraid of, and I know friends that I have around me, is that we are just becoming echo chambers of each other, and and again, that's very toxic. If we're not allowing ourselves to hear other people's opinions, if we're not, seeking opportunities to learn more about others' opinions, especially when they're not necessarily rooted in fact, but more rooted in experience and life experiences. Because a lot of people's opinions are not rooted in fact. You could present the facts, but at the end of the day, our opinions are kind of facts overlaid with our experiences and, who we've encountered across our life journey and the experiences that we've had. So I think that that's important when we're talking about some of these conversations that can be controversial, that the people we're talking to are people just like us. And for the most part, people want to be good. People are good. We're not out to hurt others. And the majority of the time, it is not on purpose. And it's
Well,
just
speak for yourself. I want utter pain with everybody that's not me. But now, how old are you again?
I just turned 24 this weekend.
Oh my gosh, you are the best. I mean, this is like, I just great hope for the future just meeting you. You're just, I mean, that's everything you said is just so sensible. And yeah, and I think there's two types of people.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go on a little rant, so hold on.
Couple of comments first before we get just so we don't take this
Sonia
completely
Harris,
off the rails. So even though Sonia Stone told me that said that she was going to cancel me, she did make a very good point, and I'm going to hold her to it. We have to learn to disagree with respect, grace, and mercy. To that point, we're getting lots of other comments, but also our good friend Jeremy Segal from Y Influence, excellent podcast. Go there and subscribe. Great points, Vanessa. Hi, Chris and Dan. All right.
Yeah, he's a
Dan.
hitter. But all right, so listen, in my opinion, and my very highly uneducated, non-college degree opinion, there's two types of people. There's the decent and indecent, and you just get to choose which side you want to be on. And as far as canceling people out or not being offended by someone else's opinions, every once in a while you just got to wake up and realize, who cares what you think? Who cares what I think? I'm not affecting anybody's life but myself. So just let them go. And so I had an incident I'm going to share with you. Put everybody on here because I'm sick of looking at myself. There we go. All right.
I don't believe that, but go ahead.
Okay. Actually, this morning I was less than 100% when I woke up this morning. And it was like, it was weird. And so I was just kind of dragging. Right? I literally did this. I went to the bathroom, looked in the mirror, and did this. And I smiled at myself like a goofball until I started laughing at myself and completely changed my mood. Just like that. And you know why?
Yourself.
And you know why? Because I didn't want to feel less than 100%. I wanted to feel better. And I've noticed that there's a group of people, and in every generation, who kind of never thought that it's possible to change the way you feel. So like there are things that could offend you. For instance, I said to somebody very close to me when I was looking at protesters that were the ones that were breaking, the ones that were looting and stuff, and I was looking, and I posed this question. How many of those people do you think go to church on Sunday who are doing that right now? And just that, where I just made, I made a comment. It was just a question that this person had never thought of. Just that was enough to get hung up on. Just that was enough to say, we no longer can talk. And I thought it was just a question. And I'm thinking, why is that a problem? It doesn't affect your life. It could just make you. And so then, later on, I spoke to the person. I said, do you like being offended by things like that? And she said, no. And so I said, well, then just don't be offended by it. You get to choose. So my question to you, Vanessa, was that, and that was a very common kind of refrain in my life growing up. Hey, it's none of your business. You're right. It's none of my business. Is that type of conversation again, you're not the spokesman, and I think the world of you, even more so. Every breath that comes out, you climb up the ladder even higher in my esteem. But so there's nothing you could say that would affect that. Was that type of what I just expressed ever shared with you before by any educator or any person?
So, I mean, I've never heard that specific argument, but I think, like the hanging up, that is really where we're going wrong. Even if what you said was wrong, Dan, like we have to continue to have those conversations because that person could have had the opportunity to change your mind. So I think the reaction that, oh, this person is being offensive, I don't want to talk to them, And that's, one of my biggest things of like heading these things straight on. We have to come from a place of compassion and a place of listening. Like one of our first reaction when we hear people say things that we don't agree with or offend us, if you want to use that word, is to fight back and defend ourselves, when really we need to sit there and listen and think, okay, why did Dan say what he said? But now I have the opportunity to change his mind, instead of hanging up, because now that person is hung up, and to you that has also communicated that that person doesn't want to have that conversation. That person is just going to hang up with me if I try to have this conversation. So it's not worth having the conversation. Or if what you had to say was right, they're missing an opportunity to change their opinion, because that's another thing that we need to do, is not just sit here and listen to each other and have understanding, but we have to be open to changing our thoughts and opinions as well.
Is she not? I mean, you're killing me.
Yes.
I mean, you're killing me. This is perfect.
And I don't know if one would argue with me on this, but it's, a lot of the reasons why we're here and what's happened in the past number of weeks is because a lot of people refused to listen. And for whatever reason, if it was based in fear or ignorance or misunderstanding or whatever, there was no listening, and there was no sort of, to your earlier point, we are all humans here in this thing. And the person that hangs up on someone else or decides to walk away or decides to just hammer out this ugly post on a social network is not constructively working towards a place where we don't have ignorance, and a place where we don't have racism, and we don't have hate, and we don't have cancel culture. We don't have those things.
Chris,
you have to, you have to open up.
I've ever heard.
Is it? Okay. All right.
Okay.
But
Thank you for arguing.
I also want to interject on that. Is one of my characteristic traits. I don't know if you guys have ever done the 16 personalities, like the Myers-Briggs. I am an advocate at heart, and that is truly what I love to do. Is I want to sit here and have these conversations. I can talk to anybody and figure out. I'm not saying like I'm really good at this, but I can have empathy for everybody and everyone's opinions. So the person who's hanging up with you, like I've been that person on you. I've been that person too. I'm not saying that their feelings are any less validated, but even as a society, we are not equipped. Like that's kind of how we got here. We're not equipped
so there's a
to
challenge.
Understand.
So why are we not equipped? I think that's beautiful. Why? I mean, that's something that should be taught.
Yeah. No, I don't know.
Generally,
I don't know why we're not.
Okay.
I don't know why we're not.
All right. So here, I'm going to give you
to get further into.
It's time for a sales energizer tip of the day.
Uh-oh.
Okay. So here it is. If you've never been taught this, allow the Deej to express this, and you could ignore it later. But here it is. There's three things you could say really good when you disagree with something vehemently, and it's almost on an emotional. You feel it coming up, and you just want to fight back. There's three things you could say to calm yourself down and get to the point. You say this. You're a big jerk. You're a sexist, intolerant, xenophobic, homophobic, racist, bigot. Boom. They said that to me, and I say this. Interesting. Why would you say that? Put it right back on them. Or you could say, oh, that's interesting. Why would you think that? Just those two little things. If you just come right back, stop for a second. And after they give you a big, something nuts, even after the thing that I said, how many of those people do you think went to church on Sunday that are looting that place? If the person who was offended at that question could have said to me, interesting. Why would you ask such a question like that? And the onus would be put on me to defend myself without that person being antagonistic.
Well, and you didn't come at them with a confrontational thing.
Right.
I think that's unfortunately what a lot of people do is they take the defensive when something like that happens.
And you could do it in sales too. I'm teaching, when you do it in sales too, it's $5,000. And the person says, that's way too much. I would never pay that. Interesting. Why would you say that? And you just let the person defend what they want to pay. All right, I'm done talking. You got to ask a question because I'm just going to keep on going, Christine.
Yeah. No, this has been fantastic, and we've got a lot of comments here.
So much better than I thought it would be.
I didn't want to take this thing off the rails because there was a lot of great commentary here, Vanessa. So thank you for that. But
so Vanessa, if you're not the spokesman for your two generations, and you could take a third one if you want to, who cares? You should be, because I think you're great.
Well, I appreciate that, Dan. My biggest goal right now, not my biggest goal, but one of my goals with you, Dan, we don't know each other, that well. We just met, but I have a feeling we're probably going to get to know each other really well. And I'm excited to understand you more so that we can talk about those interesting conversations that you bring up. And I can, really understand like where you're coming from. So maybe I could tell you like, hey, this is why that person did this, or like, hey, and we can have those honest conversations, because it does bring, the humanity back into it, and having an understanding for that person of like, oh, this person isn't a racist, xenophobic, whatever. This person just has a background and this is what's going on. Now let's like see if we could like reframe that for this person. If that
that's
makes
that's a great message for any generation. Just
for anybody,
to someone regardless of their age or any other demographic you would put on here. I just want to put Jeff's comment up here. Very well said. There are two kinds of people: decent people and those that aren't decent. Align yourself with decent people who have your back and will stick with you. Spoken like Jeff Sheehan. That was great comment here. Another comment from whoever this person is. People focus more on self than others, so there's no empathy. We have a heart issue.
That's a good woman right there.
Yeah.
Is that offensive, calling her a woman? Is that
not to me?
Okay.
I can't, but I'm not a woman, so I don't know. I can't really identify, unfortunately.
Well, I think that's awesome. This has gone so much better than I thought it would go, and it's because I think you're part of the decent side, and it's great.
Don't
and
put that on me.
I think
Don't
you're
put that on me, Dan.
I think you're wise beyond your linear years. How's that for something fancy?
I appreciate that. It's not true. I think, a lot of people around me, it's not just my generation, it's the generations before me. But like I said, when you told me I was coming on, we're going to talk about this, my first thing was I wanted to go do research. But I knew no matter how much research I went and did between, last night and this conversation, I would by no means become the expert. So we need to stop hiding behind that, and just be genuine and be honest with each other, because that's going to always become like the best conversation. That's always going to create the best outcome. So I think that people just need to come in with like what Sonia said was it's a heart problem. We really do need to open our hearts. That doesn't necessarily mean we have to relinquish our opinions, but just coming to it like open-minded, open-hearted, and having like real conversations that the person talking to me is by no means a bad person. Not that I would think that of you, Dan, but the people that we're talking to are just people like us.
I can't think of a better way to end than with those comments.
I agree. This was fantastic. Thank you, everyone who joined. All the comments. This is Vanessa. You're wise beyond your years. All right, great. Thanks so much, Vanessa. And I guess Dan, or you want to sign us off with a go get 'em?
Just remember, listen, this is what time is it? It's only 12:44 right now. You got a whole nother half a day to kill it. And you don't want to stop now, because this is when everybody else is slowing down. Now you got a chance to kick it up a notch and gain all that extra market share from people who are doing nothing because they're too busy eating. So you go get them today. I'm the Deej. You're the best. And just kill it today.